The legacy of John D. Rockefeller. In today's video, we're going to dig deep into the history of one of the greatest men alive. Rockefeller was the world's first billionaire, and he had a huge battle with another really powerful guy, Andrew Carnegie, along with other presidents as well. So this guy was not shy of going into battle. He went from rags to riches. It's a story of old money, had nothing, became the most powerful and richest man in the world. I'm Casey Chohan, founder of togethercfo. Let's go. So the American dream, going from rags to riches, the story of John D. Rockefeller. So Rockefeller was a religious kid. He had really strong religious beliefs and a really hard work ethic. This came from his family home, unfortunately not from his father, who was not there half the time. He was out selling miracle potions and having second marriages and a whole host of other nefarious things. But what that did for John in his family was it made him the head of the household from a very young age. That installed the really strong work ethic in John from a very early age, where he was effectively the man of the house from a very young age, providing for his family and his mother, while his dad was out doing what he did. That hard work ethic, along with good religious values, funnily enough, from a very young age, it's been well documented that John D. Rockefeller had done a lot of philanthropy, and on average, it's estimated that he gave 10% of his pay to charities, usually his church, but also other charities that were near and dear to him. From a very young age, he dropped out of school and went to get a job. So he went into the marketplace as a young kid looking for a job, looked at all the big companies that were operating in his town and kept getting rejected one by one by one. He would go, they would see, hey, this young kid, he's looking for a job, no chance, get out of here, until he found his first job. Funnily enough, his first job was as a bookkeeper, which is awesome because it gives you a really good sense of dealing with vendors, other people, cash flows in and out, balancing books, and seeing large sums of money, right? Which you wouldn't necessarily see in any other role. He quickly progressed in his role as a bookkeeper, and within 2 years he noticed that the company was going out of business, and then he started his own business. He partnered up with a friend of his, Clark, and they started Clark and Rockefeller selling grain, believe it or not. So they were then in their own partnership, and when that ran its course, that's really when John kicked into gear and started the company we all know as Standard Oil. John went on to quickly negotiate some amazing deals on oil with the two biggest companies in the area, Erie and New York Central. They were going through some difficulties because at that time, oil landscape was changing, refineries were pulling out and away, and so he saw a really good opportunity then. And this is a really good skill set that John kind of had from a young age, was to see an opportunity and turn that into money effectively. So what that did was it locked in really low prices for John to purchase a set quantity of oil on a regular basis from these two companies. And what that then does is it undercuts his competitors. So he knew he was getting a huge discount on the oil compared to what his competitors were paying. So over time, he could squeeze the prices down. That would slowly suffocate his competition because he knew that he could undercut them. Supply and demand, but ultimately comes down to really good negotiation skills, and he knew his margins. So he had that bookkeeping skill set right from the start that helped him progress all throughout his career, but evidently straight out into Standard Oil where he got very good terms. Right, the next biggest milestone in his illustrious career was called the Cleveland Massacre. So we'll fast forward in a few years now, but in a period of only 6 weeks, John managed to get 22 competitors. There was only 26 of them at the time, so he got the vast majority of his competitors to sell their businesses to him for a fraction of what they were worth. And this again was a masterclass in negotiations. He was amazing at this. He used rumors, he was bribing people, he had backhanded deals. There's loads of stuff going on in these times. But the bottom line was he managed to close 22 out of 26, and that just gave him massive power and control, economies of scale. At the same time, the railroads, he was phasing them out because he started building pipelines. He's thinking, all right, where's the future? What do we need to do? How do we reduce costs? he's using the fundamentals of his bookkeeping background in running his business and creating more profit, right? So this had less need on railroads, and it gave the company its name of the octopus, right? It's got all these tentacles flying all around. And one of the things I noticed when studying John was he's really a master at turning chaotic situations into amazing opportunities. So kind of like the silver lining in every cloud, right? He can see a situation and he's like, oh, okay, this is where this is going. We need to get into pipelines, or we need to fix our prices, or do these deals, acquire these companies, squeeze them, get the best prices, merge them all together, and boom, we've got this huge company, Standard Oil. And this is really the next evolution of Standard Oil when it goes into vertical integrations. It went vertically through oil integrations, and specifically we can use the example of skunk oil. So there was this type of oil that was found, and it was very smelly oil, so nobody really liked using it, and therefore the demand was low. What John did was he bought it really low because nobody wanted it, and then it took him a year or so for his engineers to be able to remove the sulfur from the oil and therefore clean up the oil and sell it for a really high price. So that was skunk oil is what it was referred to, because it smelt and all it was sulfur in the oil. But he thought through the problem of, hey, how do I get this and make it into something valuable? And it took a time to do that. This isn't happening overnight. It's not this instant, everything right now world that we live in here. But this was back in the days that he had that much foresight into strategically thinking. And a lot of what he did was amazing strategy on how can I get 2-3 steps ahead. He's playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers pretty much. So at this point, he's already one of the most brilliant and ruthless and rich people in the world. A lot of that all coincides and overlaps. And at this point, he wasn't a great investor. So he hired a guy, Frederick Gates, who was an ex-pastor, believe it or not, very random, but one of the most brilliant men that influenced Rockefeller was Frederick Gates. Frederick then became John's investment advisor, and also then went to mentor John's son, John Jr. That was a really great move, because when we look at this, you might be a brilliant individual at what you do, whatever industry you're in, but it doesn't mean you're a well-rounded person at everything, right? So this is where the value of team comes into play, is knowing where your strengths and your weaknesses lie and filling that with stronger people in those circumstances. A prime example of this can be a family office. If you look at any wealthy elite family, they all have a family office, an elite team of people working solely for them. Not everyone can afford a family office, so you can look at multi or virtual family offices. There's a lot of ways to do that. But generally speaking, a team of people that are working with you, for your benefit, right? So that's exactly what Frederick was for John and John's son, John Jr. So John Jr. learned from both John Rockefeller and Frederick Gates. So this kid had like some rock stars around him. Then there was always this rivalry between Andrew Carnegie and Rockefeller, but they managed to patch that up and joined forces, created another backroom deal, and they merged, right? So they were then doing a deal where Rockefeller would provide the raw materials for Carnegie's steel mills and the transportation along his railroads. So that worked really well until our good old friend JP Morgan chimes in, and he saw a great opportunity here. Back to strategic thinking, right? These guys are elite. They're always a few steps ahead of the average person on the street, right? Morgan comes in and he's like, what if I bought Carnegie's business and Rockefeller's business and put them together, which is exactly what he did. And he created the first billion-dollar company, which was genius because he saw exactly where the Industrial Revolution was going. And he was already the biggest banker in America at the time. So he saw the writing on the wall, pulled off this amazing move. That was really great for Rockefeller. Although he retained 30% of the company, he wasn't hands-on anymore. The issue then came along where President Roosevelt hated Standard Oil, used them as like the poster boy, had a huge lawsuit, the biggest at the time, against Standard Oil, saying it was a monopoly, it was bribing officials, it was doing loads of corrupt things, and to a certain degree, he was right. So all of the dirty laundry came out in the wash. Rockefeller's father came up on his adultery, second marriage, all the scams he was doing, and this affected John, even though he was later in life. to top it all off, because of Roosevelt, he was then forced to split up the company into smaller sections. This was actually counterintuitive, but it worked really well because the times had changed. Gas had become more popular than kerosene, and it was really, really fortunate because his 30% of Standard Oil then diluted into these multiple other companies, 30 plus other companies that all were doing really well and blew up just because of the timing of the industry, right? So this actually made Rockefeller even richer, and that's where he started in 1913, the foundation. Back in 1913, this is where John D. Rockefeller started the Rockefeller Foundation, which today has given over tens of billions of dollars. And it also started, or was a big component of, the education system as we know it today. So I'll do another video on the education system explaining how it's there to create employees. Click this button if you would like to see that, or leave me a comment. Remember to like and subscribe also. But it shows the story of John D. Rockefeller going from a poor child to quickly becoming the head of the household, trading, learning his skills, using his bookkeeping, finding business opportunities, learning to see them and take advantage of them. But along the way, he also always gave to charity. Today, his kids continue that legacy on. Having a foundation is a great way to strategically give back to the community, but also instill those values in future generations. I think is really, really important, especially in the world that we live in today. And you can pass on your knowledge and power through a foundation to future generations, and then even generations that come after that, because we've seen all the studies, we've read them all. By the third generation, you go from rags to riches to rags. It goes full circle if you don't instill those values into the future generations. And we've seen that John D. Rockefeller definitely did that with bringing in Frederick Gates to teach his son, to make his son, Rockefeller Jr., a more rounded individual who could then negotiate with the likes of JP Morgan face to face. Great deal. Made them even wealthier, and then gives back tens of billions of dollars. What are your thoughts on John D. Rockefeller? Was he an amazing individual? Was he a corrupt businessman? Leave a comment. Let me know what you think. I'm KC Chauhan, founder of Together CFO. Peace.